All right, so good afternoon. We are sitting here today with a few of our graduates, and we'll kind of run through introductions just really quickly. These are all folks that are involved in the world of broadcasting. So for those students out there that are looking to or are majoring in concentrating in broadcasting, thinking about what to do, where to go, we're going to have a great discussion today with these folks on kind of what their journey has been so far. So with that, we'll kind of jump in and we'll kind of start with Hunter. Hunter, if you could just kind of introduce yourself, tell us where you're at, what you're doing, a little bit about your job.
Cool. So I am Hunter Bryn. Right now, I am currently in Richmond, Virginia, working for WWBT, the NBC 12 affiliate, or NBC affiliate. Most of us people know it as NBC 12. I'm a photographer, so basically what I would do is I'm in charge of all video and editing for my reporter's story. So I come in the morning, they pair me with a reporter, we sit through an editorial meeting, and we pitch stories, and they decide what they want for the day, and then we go out and we get content for the shows. Currently, I'm working a dayside shift, so I work around from like 9:30 to 6:30 every day, which is the dream. Because I've worked the morning shift and the night shift. But basically we run and we go out, get our stories, shoot video, interview people, and then we run live shots for our 4 o'clock show, 5 o'clock show, and 6 o'clock show. And from there, it's pretty much all I have to worry about, except for special projects and special events every once in a while.
Awesome. Jarrett, how about you?
Sure. Name's Jarrett Frazier. Graduated Western in 2012, but I work currently here in Stamford, Connecticut with Peacock. I just transitioned over. I say that, but it's actually been a full year now. Before that, I was on the NBC Sports side. So basically been here in Connecticut for the last 8 years. Currently, especially responsibilities, my role is Director of System Engineering and Reliability, basically for Peacock. What that ultimately means, and I can kind of show you a little bit here, but I oversee an engineering team that basically facilitates an entire room here in Stamford, Connecticut, that is pretty much, especially now, staffed 24/7 with on-air personnel, basically to make sure that all of the single live event or sporting events or kind of content that's landing on the app is working properly. So I'm kind of overseeing that group. And as far as hours and work life, I don't have a time schedule. Pretty much I'm reached out at any time of the day, especially lately with football launching last night, Premier League coming back tomorrow. A lot of different things happening. It's round the clock time. So very busy here, but a lot, not just on the Peacock side, but still everything with NBC Sports, Olympics, etc. So that's kind of my area of responsibilities.
Okay, and so for those of us that aren't super familiar, tell us what Peacock is.
Peacock is a new streaming platform that launched officially July 15th. Before that, it was exclusive on Comcast X1 subscribers, but it's basically in pretty much the same kind of competitive business as the Hulus, the Netflix, the Disney Pluses, with the exception of what the app itself is. It's not what we call an SVOD service, a subscription video on demand. It's more of an AVOD, advertising video on demand. So there's different pricing tiers for access to the app without ads, or kind of a free tier with limited content but free access. So it's kind of a new app that's in that new OTT market and in space.
Awesome, great. All right,
whole
Jake.
New world of technology.
Yeah.
Yes, and with it, all of the new challenges as well.
Yeah. Jake, you're up.
Yeah, my name is Jake Myers, and just like Hunter, 2015 graduate. Is that right, Hunter? 2015 sounds right. 26. Okay, whatever. I was ahead.
Graduated before me, though.
I always forget.
2015,
I'm 2015. Hunter's 2016. So a little bit after Jared. I worked with Jared a little bit there, as a student, but didn't get a full chance to work with him. But we kind of did the same things when we were both there. I'm actually glad Scott asked me to do this because prior to this is when I actually left my radio job that he thinks I currently have. So this is going to be a fun conversation. But I'll get into that in just a bit. So I actually worked for an ESPN radio station here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where I currently am. I did that for about 3.5 years, like right after graduation, into about the turn of 2018, 2019. I had a host of responsibilities from post-production, pre-production, on air, just a lot of producing, board operating, just everything that came with radio. It was a smaller station, so it was one of those things where you have a limited number of employees, and everyone kind of had to do an all hands on deck sort of approach. And I had a lot of responsibilities. My day-to-day was probably in the wheelhouse of like 12 to 7, because I worked primarily on the afternoon drive show, which started at 3. So I got in there a little early to get things going and to get things moving. But I will say the reason that I've transitioned out of that job, or the reason that happened, is just because I realized that my time there, it was fleeting. It wasn't working out no matter what I did. And that's why part of this call is going to be part of me telling my experience and why that didn't work for me, and me identifying that. So I've since left that. Pre-COVID, because COVID has hit all of us pretty hard in some respects. Pre-COVID, I was actually just working at a brewery here in Charlotte. It's just something, craft beer is a big thing. I'm a big fan of that. But on top of that, I was working, and still currently am working, with the Carolina Panthers in a broadcasting capacity in their Panther Vision department. If some of you might be familiar with Purple Vision, I think that still might be what it's called there at Western, at least with the football team. Same sort of deal here. And my job as a part of Panther Vision is to be the public address announcer spotter. Jarrett probably is familiar with that role of what that means. So basically, long story short, to kind of tie a bow on this, what I do is I sit right next to the public address announcer that's in the stadium, and everything that happens during the game, all of the game action, I call to him through a headset. He relays it to everybody in the stadium. So anytime he messes up, it was my fault. But a lot of people don't know that. So I've been doing that for about 4 seasons. This is going to be my 5th season. I actually stepped on with them right after they went to the Super Bowl, and it's kind of been downhill ever since. So I'm going to blame that partly on me. I'm currently not doing that role as of this coming Sunday for the first home game, just because there's no fans in the stands. So my job is kind of not needed at this point. But as COVID rules and regulations change and the governors ease things up, hopefully I can get back there, because that's been arguably just the best experience I could have had post-college, and I've been really thankful for that. And I'm sure we'll get more into how all these things came about for all of us, but I'd be really interested to tell the story of how I got that position. But that's currently where I am, just kind of stuck in the mud just because of COVID.
Still a Panthers fan.
Attaboy, Jarrett. Attaboy. Here, I got the hat on. I got the shirt. We're all decked out over here.
There you go.
You got all the swag.
That's right, man.
That is pretty awesome. Well, so that kind of leads us into this next question. Like, so what happened when you left Western? So if you're thinking back to that kind of time, and your graduation is looming, and for Kata and I, we talk to students all the time, and they run the range of, I know exactly what I want to do, to, oh my God, I can't, it's coming too fast. Where did all this time go? So really kind
they're pretty lost now. They don't even know where
and
leadership is.
Yeah, now we've made it even worse. So tell us a little bit about kind of like that experience of how did you go from being Western broadcasting student to Western graduate broadcasting professional?
All right, I'll kick this off since I kind of left off where I was. And I know we'll get probably more into the internship side here in a minute, but what ended up happening for me is I actually had too many credits. That's what I was told. I had too many credits when I was a senior at Western. So I had to basically decide whether I was going to graduate in the fall of 2014, which would be 3.5 years, as opposed to May of 2015, which is when I actually graduated, which would have been the full 4 years. And part of that was having to do my internship in between at some point. I could have done it over the summer of 2014, but I decided that I wanted to graduate with the kids, in all my peers in the comm department that I came to really got to know, Hunter being one of them. and just like see all those people again and kind of really actually enjoy a senior year as opposed to graduating in the fall. So I actually did an internship at the radio station that I ended up working at postgraduate. And that was just a local station. Again, I really just went in there and just basically went face to face and just gave them a resume, told them who I was, and it ended up working out. So over the fall of 2014, I did my internship, went back to school again, spring of 2015. And then immediately after graduating, where things kind of hit like a bump in the road where I couldn't really find exactly what I was looking for, I ended up going back to that radio station. And I really, really thrived there in a bunch of different ways. But again, the environment changes around you, management changes hands, things that are out of your control happen. And I did the best that I could in that circumstance. And so at the end of 2018 is when I actually left there officially, just under my own power, under my own decision. I just wasn't where I felt like I was supposed to be. And like the biggest thing too is just, that's key as well, is just to identify kind of what ways you want to move about in your career. And, when I was at Western, I was all over the athletic department, the communication department. Like I was all over the place doing a bunch of different things. I actually had part-time work doing remote production with some production companies, doing like different basketball games and football games across the state of North Carolina, whether it was like Elon, Coastal Carolina, Wilmington. So every weekend, if I wasn't working at Western doing football or basketball or something like that, I was out actually getting paid as a freelancer to do those sorts of things in a production truck. I was working graphics. A lot of things happened really quickly for me. And I was really excited about the possibility of postgraduate and what that was going to look like. And my expectations and my reality were completely different. Absolutely, completely different. A lot of that was on me. But I will say that the biggest thing is to just, if you can't identify what you want to do, put your foot forward in a lot of different areas, and maybe you'll be surprised. I always thought I wanted to do sports broadcasting and sports radio, and then I started doing it, and I realized maybe this wasn't it, which is kind of where I'm at now. So it's really, really important to identify exactly what you want to do. And if you don't know, just try to diversify yourself and be versatile, because if you can do a lot of things, you're going to be better than someone who can do just one thing really well. And that's the biggest thing I would say. And again, I'm still looking at broadcasting things. I still have my job with the Panthers. I'm happy about that. But I was very happy that even though things didn't work out at that radio station I was at, I was happy that I could identify that and move on quickly from it.
All right, I get it.
How about you? What's your experience?
Kata, she didn't even say a name. She's like, you.
Jared. I said Jared. If it's Hunter, I'm going to say Brun. What's your experience?
My experience, a little similar because except one giant opportunity that I got, which was it was going to be an internship, but it turned out just to be a part-time job at the Summer Olympics in 2012 at London. And really, that was, more than anything, that was my foot in the door. And I knew it was that as well. So really, through that opportunity, the following fall, they were building this new facility here in Stamford, Connecticut to consolidate all of their sports groups under one building. And the position opened up and I was able to come on. But actually returning back to North Carolina, where I'm from as well, I did a little bit like you were doing, Jake. I was running around between different production shows, running camera, running whatever I could just to find some of those freelance gigs. And truthfully, I just got fortunate that the opportunity here with NBC opened up. But very similar, actually. I started here as an ingest assistant, so kind of just watching recordings of all of the sporting events. And then kind of moved up into transmission engineering, then overseeing that group and really diving more into the digital aspects of everything that we've done in that time as well. So that's where for me, really once Peacock started to come about into reality, I was very, very quick to jump at any chance I could, just knowing that that's the future of where a lot of content is going. And it's actually been very present, especially now with COVID and after launch. A lot of things are up and down, especially on the sports world more than anything, on if productions are happening, who's essential, who's not. But I've kind of been able to find at least my area of enjoyment, kind of on the digital side. And it's funny, I similarly had time in production trucks, but I learned, and at one point I wanted to be a TD, but I realized the life of a TD is running around from production to production to production. And, you know, as life happens, you know, and I've now got a 6-month-old and wife, and that's not really the lifestyle I wanted long-term, to be running from event to event and missing weekends. I mean, that's when sports happen. So I've kind of been able to find a day job, at least, that still revolves around those types of workflows and responsibilities. I might not have my button on a TD switch, but actually, even right before this call, I had to drop an encoder and change out streams of something that's going to live audiences. So there's still some of those aspects to it. And really, you know, as you mentioned there, you hit on the head. I mean, all of those different opportunities and skills really do slowly build up over time. And so, you know, if someone says something about a production truck, I don't need to be taught what it is. I've done it. I've been there. So all of that experience really does help build, you know, and get to where you are. And I'm still not sure this is where I want to stay all time, but it's at least where I'm enjoying the wave right now. So sometimes it's also just finding what's available. And it's certainly a harder time now than ever with everything that's going on. But that's kind of been my steps to at least where I'm at.
I'm gonna have to ask Don to be our reference point for all of the acronyms and the abbreviations. It's been a long time. I'm like, okay, TD, what was technical director? Yeah,
technical director. Yes,
technical
the
director.
person
I gotta remember that.
feeds.
It's been a long time since I've done broadcasting stuff. So
I am sorry. There are honestly so many acronyms. I think I can make a rap, but only use acronyms and actually have a physical talk right now. My wife thinks I speak a foreign Klingon code or something.
Well, you probably do, Jared. Let's be fair. Probably.
It's probably fair.
Probably.
Hunter?
All right. So starting, I guess, from in college, I didn't really have a internship that really revolved around broadcasting. I kind of made up a BS internship so that I could go to Colorado for the summer. But
Hey, but it was good internship.
with that being said, I spent a lot of my time in college building relationships and friends and networking, from going down to Florida for an SPJ conference, to Las Vegas, to RTDNA, BA, NAD, the big conference where they show off all the new cameras. Sorry for the acronyms. But I spent a lot of my time making friends and networking, and just, I mean, I was also really involved on campus. I was a lab tech teaching people how to use Adobe. I was on Purple Vision. I did SPJ, all kinds of different stuff. So I was very connected.
Did the journalist too.
Yes, because I also have a journalism degree, technically. But because of those relationships, what happened to me for my first job was a buddy of me and Jake's, Jansen Silvers. I don't know if you guys have talked to him.
I saw him last week, by the way. It was great.
Yeah.
I can't talk to him about broadcasting stuff anymore because he's jumped the fence. He's doing public relations now.
Exactly.
Well, he went to the school system,
but he's killing it, and he has a kid.
He's killing
it.
But
so Jansen Silvers graduated same year as Jake and went up to Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I was sitting in my dorm one night, and I really honestly had no idea I knew I wanted to be in broadcasting and journalism. I just didn't know what I really wanted to do. I know I didn't want to be on camera. I could tell you that. But so he called me and said, hey, we have an editor position open. What do you think? And that was my foot in the door. And I basically got a call from the news director the next day after saying I was interested. I didn't really apply for the job. I just kind of was put in the position. And then so from there, I was an editor on the morning show, which basically meant I woke up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and worked till noon every day. And then from there, I got really bored. So I went to the news director and I said, hey, from 10 a.m. to noon, I'm just kind of sitting around. What can I do? And I partnered up with a reporter and came up with this pitch to kind of change my job description to add photography into it. So from 10 o'clock or like 9 o'clock to noon, I would go out with a reporter. I shoot a story. The deal was as long as I was back in time to edit the noon show. But from there, I became photog / editor. And then from that position, we had our chief photog leave, and I ended up becoming the chief photog for about a year at this small market TV station, which was great for me because I learned a lot about the industry and about how cameras work and just stuff that I didn't necessarily learn while in school. It was a lot of hands-on training. And then kind of through happenstance, my wife is a pastor, and she was a pastor down in Wilmington. She was doing some really cool stuff with her church, which got the local news, WECT in Wilmington's attention. And I just happened to be down there, and I was like, oh, I work in news, they work in news. Maybe I'll just kind of go to the shoot and just see what happens. I met a reporter. Her name is Jasmine Turner. We didn't really become good friends, but we became Facebook friends. And that was enough for me to, when it came time for me to start looking for jobs, I knew she was in Richmond, Virginia. I wanted to move to Richmond, Virginia. Sent in my resume, and then I sent her a Facebook message and said, hey, I don't know if you did the story about a church in Wilmington selling bikes. We met while you were on the shoot. Maybe put my resume in the right hands. And the next day I had a job interview with NBC 12 where I'm at now. And through the process of getting here, I've made a lot of different contacts. I was just telling Scott that I just actually got off the phone yesterday with a reporter who used to work in Richmond, who is looking for a photographer to move to Raleigh. I will not be taking that position because I love Richmond and don't really want to move away. But it's for me, it was more about relationships and the networking and just having those people who can say, let me put you in the right room, or let me just like make the introduction, and you can go from there. So for my job story is very much about who you know at the right times.
Interesting. You all said, well, a couple of you said the F word, freelancing out there. Lots of folks get kind of interested in freelancing. And so as a student, if that's something they think they want to start doing or help them get more experience, how would you recommend kind of approaching going after some freelancing gigs? Where do you start?
Well, I know for me, the way mine came about, and again, I was pretty instrumental with the athletic department. So ESPN, this is, back in 2013, 2014 at the time. So I was like a sophomore or junior, and it was like when ESPN3 was really starting to take off and that sort of thing. Now, obviously, it's like ESPN Plus and all these different streaming services, but ESPN3, there's a production company that came to do a game at Western for basketball. Don't even remember who they were playing. Maybe it was like BMI or something like that. It doesn't really matter. But I was one of two people that got the opportunity to work with the production crew that showed up. And I actually got put inside the truck to run the score bug, which if you watch any sports game at all, just basically where the score is, timeouts, all that stuff. Someone does in fact run that. And I was actually in charge of that for the game. And the guy I was sitting next to was the font coordinator, the graphics coordinator. So he was dealing with every other graphic you would see during the game, during the event, and basically just connected with him and just kind of talked with him. And then one of the other producers it was the talent coordinator. Basically, he was next to the talent, and talent stats was his role. So basically the graphics coordinator and the talent coordinator basically went back and forth. So the talent who was calling the game, broadcasting the game, could get the information and the facts right during the game. It's a whole production process, but I actually got lucky enough to connect with those two guys. And over the course of about a month or two, just over conversations, basically they were like, hey, we could probably keep using you if you're willing to, to travel a little bit around the state, even though you're in school. And so of course I wasn't going to say no. It was money and it was experience. So luckily I was, as a student, got the opportunity to really start immersing myself into that, and started doing that. And that was the only freelance opportunity I ever took or I ever really went after. At the time it made sense though, just because I was a student, and not that I had a ton of time in my hands though, but it made more sense to really try to, start networking some more, like Hunter was mentioning, and really starting to know a lot of the guys in the industry. And I've actually seen those guys working with as I've worked with the Panthers over the years, I've seen those same two guys actually come in and do freelance work for the Panthers while I'm there. So it's really cool that I saw them 4 or 5 years ago, and then last year they pop up again. It's just like a really kind of small community that you see that happen with. But it's a good experience if you can find it. And I'm sure Jarrett can pass some more knowledge on actually getting into it, because they're not always advertised everywhere. Most freelance positions aren't really advertised as much. Some are online in certain ways, especially in the sports world. But I got lucky enough to just make a connection when I got an opportunity just to do it as a student, and kind of took off from there for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can build on that. I mean, I had very similar. In fact, I had a couple alumni who graduated right before me that I kind of stayed in close networking with. And as they were starting to do the rounds, I kind of kept in communication with them. And as an opportunity came up, you know, I got those chances. And as you mentioned, it's who you know, and then it's what you know. So every one of those opportunities, it is kind of that chance to ask questions, get the feel, you know. So in any event, you know, a basketball game is 2 hours, but what you don't know is that 4 hour setup time, 2 hour breakdown time before and after. So usually there's a lot of dead time just to talk to these guys when you're there and ask those questions and get a lot of those, you know, firsthand feelers for who to go to, what's available. So it's a lot of that, especially for the freelance side of it, that networking is essential, because one, you're not going to get hired back if you did a bad job or if you don't know what you're doing. So it's a very, very sink or swim kind of reality.
Is freelancing, you know, we say that freelancing is that communication in general is a great field for gig economy. How much, you know, you're in a position of a supervisor, a director. Do you hire freelancers, and how often do you hire them?
For me, no, I have full-time staff and dedicated personnel that are, you know, on the books. But, you know, production side, yes, there is a lot of that still, you know, hiring freelancers, because just the nature of, especially sports more than anything, you know, the seasons only last, you know, half a year or quarters. And depending on the event, like football, you know, that's only 1 day a week. So you can't make a living just doing NFL football unless you get in with NFL Films or one of those companies. Usually you're doing college football, then going to the NFL games and kind of doing that Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night rounds. So it just depends.
Okay. Hunter, how about in a broadcast, in the television field? I know not a lot of TV stations have videographers or photog.
So photogs are a dying breed. I can go ahead and just put that out there. I mean, we as a local TV station, there's not any freelancers, and there's no positions for freelancers. But I have noticed I've been around a lot of the network guys. Luckily, I've been, with me being in Richmond, we're so close to DC, so I've been able to go for George Bush's funeral. I've gotten to do marches where there would be network guys. Even last year when we had the Justin Fairfax sex scandal, they came here. And I mean, some of the network people are freelance, but those guys are older. I mean, they have had I mean, they're in their 40s and 50s, and they've been doing this a lot longer. So it's a lot harder to get into freelance when it comes to broadcast news, because they have, I mean, it's all, like I said, it's about who you know. I mean, these guys have clicks, and if you're not in that click, you're not getting a freelance job. Just as simple as that. I mean, then again, I mean, you have the networks who like to hire repeat guys, and it's just not an easy threshold to get through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a question for all of you. You've been in the business for between 8 to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. How have the industry changed? Not just from a perspective of your experience, but how the industry have changed, and where do you see it going?
I could start. So at my first station, I was the only photographer. When I came to Richmond, there was 13 of us, and now there's 5, at least for photographers, because what happened is there's the one-man band, the MMJs, multimedia journalists. If you want to be a reporter, you have to know how to shoot, you have to know how to edit. Luckily, my station is no one runs a live shot by themselves, but that is a safety thing because of where I live. And I mean, the amount of shootings that happen in our city, it's just not safe. But at my last station, reporters would run their own live shots. They would shoot their own stories. They would edit their own stories. They would write their own stories, all while being in front of the camera as well. So the industry is definitely going more towards a do it yourself if you can do it yourself. I actually have my reporter for the day just text me, was like, I need help editing. I can't do it. But he's going to have to do it because that's his job.
Yeah. Jake, what do you think?
It's kind of what I noticed when I was doing radio, at least, and I'll get more on the TV production side here in a second, but just the way stations and organizations and businesses are trying to cut costs by allowing one person to do 3 jobs instead of having 3 jobs and 3 separate people. As you've probably seen over the last, at least year now, 2 years, all the layoffs going on across the country, whether it be from the New York Times, whether it be from the Boston Globe, ESPN, CBS, Fox, all the major networks, you just see people getting cut. NBC, people getting cut left and right. People who've been there for 20 plus years doing a great job, people who are nationally known in a lot of respects too. There's, a lot of the times the networks are basically trying to find ways not to just save a little bit of money here and there by allowing someone to do multiple positions instead of paying 2 people. Why pay 2 people $50,000 a year each if you can just pay one $60,000 or $70,000 or whatever the case may be, right? It's like save a nickel, save a dime there. In addition, one thing that kind of took me by surprise at the time, although I wasn't really super surprised at all. In addition to doing the Panther games here in Charlotte, we do all the college games that come through Bank of America Stadium, which this year we're supposed to include the Wake Forest Notre Dame game, but obviously that's now Wake Forest Clemson because of COVID. But all the college kickoff games, the ACC championship game, the Belk Bowl, which is now the Duke Mayonnaise something bowl. I don't even know what it is anymore. But we did all the college games. And for one of the college games that was here, the broadcast team that did that game was not even in the stadium. It was all remote. But you would never know. You could never tell the difference. But it's just another way of changing the way you do things while saving costs on top of it. And I can guarantee you can watch a game. If you're just looking at the sports side of things, watch a game and you would not know the difference whether they are there in the arena, in the stadium, in that venue, or calling it, watching TV monitors. You would not know the difference because that is the power of broadcasting. And Jarrett can probably speak to that as well. You would have no idea. But it's just one of those things where a lot of companies are cutting down the number of people they actually need, which is why if you can get a leg up on other people, because it's competitive. It's a very competitive industry. The sports world, the news world, anything in regards to that, it's competitive. You can get a leg up by being more well-rounded and versatile and show your worth compared to someone who can only do one thing. Like, if they can only edit, like Hunter's mentioning, you need to be able to edit. You need to be able to shoot. You need to be able to, possibly be on camera. You need to be able to do all these things that maybe 2 or 3 people it used to take to do it. But if you can do that, you're going to be a lot more valuable to somebody and to an employer, and they're going to be more willing to want you to stay. And that is what is really critical because everything is changing around us, especially with COVID and a lot of these sports organizations and everything else losing a ton of money. I feel so bad. I know a lot of people in the athletic departments of a lot of colleges around the country, and they've all lost their jobs just because they can't sustain it, right? They're not making any money. I mean, the crazy idea for those of you that do follow sports, because obviously that's what I'm passionate about and what I've worked in, is the idea that they were trying to pitch an all-inclusive NCAA tournament for March Madness, right? Because this whole past year, they didn't have one. It's typically 68 teams. They were pitching all Division I teams, which would have included Western Carolina, by the way, if this actually happens. That's like 340 teams for March Madness. Could you imagine? 340 teams. But it's all about the money. It is important, and that's where a lot of the changes are being made in the industry, and that's why it's important for you to make sure that you're always as well-rounded and as connected as possible so you can always get a leg up and be valuable to people that are looking for others to come in and contribute to what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I'll take that to the change over a 10-year period since I've seen that to the now with COVID. But when you talk about what's changed, especially in that time, the biggest thing is, like you're saying, what's essential, what's not, who's on site, who isn't. ESPN calls it Remy Productions, where the only thing there is basically a rack of gear, connections to your cameras, and then you're signaling all of that back to your hub station, and they're producing everything from there. So there's no more trucks going out into the field. It's all coming back to your master facility that's built, that's running, that's there, and using those resources, because it saves, extreme amounts of money, because you're not paying to send 20 people on the road every week. They're all just coming to the same facility. I've seen it more than anything, especially on Olympics. Whenever I started, there were still loggers that would go just to do the typing of, hey, this person scored, this person scored. And in the years since 2012 to now, those guys and those personnel are still essential, but there's no chance they're actually traveling to the site or to Tokyo or to these venues ever again. That's all stuff that you're going to be doing, maybe even from home now, because it is essential, but the way with which you do it is completely different. And COVID takes all of that almost on steroids, because the way we do productions now is completely changed, I think, forever. When you talk about a graphics artist, they don't need to be in the truck anymore. They can be at their home and doing these updates, especially if they've got, proper connectivity and access to what they need. So that's really going to continue to change. But with that, it's still what we're all talking about here is, what skills can you provide? Do you know what this person's doing and this person's doing? And truly, it gets harder to learn this, I think, in the field, because there's less of that, especially now more than ever, that in-person cohesion and collaboration. So it does make it maybe a little bit more challenging to learn these skills, because that person is no longer there with you, right beside you. They're at home. They're just remoting in now. But that change has definitely been slowly to creep up. But now with COVID, I think it's going to stay essential. And part of it too, just the cost savings. And that's what it really gets down to. The cost of sending someone to Tokyo for a hotel room was, I think, about $2,000 for a night. So to send a single employee to Tokyo, that's almost $60,000 you're talking about just to house them. So they have to be an essential piece to the puzzle of the broadcast. And that's, especially now with COVID, that's the transition you're seeing as well. Who is essential to have to be on site manning that camera or manning that switcher or whatever it is, or what can we do to make all of this work remotely? And that's going to stay, I believe.
Wow. So that's all pretty amazing, like to hear how rapidly I think it's probably all changing. The other thing that I'm kind of amazed at as you guys sit here and talk about it is the level of knowledge. And give me a little bit of an idea on what are those things that you're kind of going to be expected to know coming out of school. And you guys have worked quite a bit in sports, obviously. It's not just about running switchers and technical stuff and editing, right? There's some other things that you probably have to really know inside and out to go do that kind of work.
I'll take this one first. The one thing that I still notice, and I was from an older group with a different teacher who's no longer there, but our final exam was to wrap a cable. That is the simplest thing anyone can do that shows me if you care about the equipment that you're touching and are knowledgeable on how to properly handle that equipment. It sounds so simple, but if you can't wrap an XLR, I don't want to trust you in the racks. I don't want to trust you over here, because I know you don't have that experience. And it's something as small as that can really show that. So there's a couple different things.
Sure. What else? Jake, how does you are Mr. Sports, right? I kind of remember this about you and Jansen too, in particular, like the sports knowledge was kind of right there. Is that essential to kind of this world that you've been working in?
Well, the over-under is definitely still important. That's how you properly wrap your cable, if I still remember correctly. Is that right, Jared? The over-under, right? Over-under, yeah. Matthias taught us well. I think that's who you're referring to. I could be wrong. But I think
Yes.
that's
Yeah. No kicks. That's all that matters. Yep.
The youngies won't understand, but we get it. We get it. I will say that, little things are important, but I will say some of the big things are critical too. Like the editing or I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what you want to get into. Like for instance, me, predominantly being in radio, I was all over Audition. That was what I used a lot to do, pretty much everything. And obviously being able to operate a production board and being able to understand some of the software we're using to run breaks and just the ability to route things to different areas. And, we were doing, we had a bunch of different baseball games we had to do for affiliates. We had a bunch of different shows we were doing for different colleges and just a bunch of things that had to, technically that I had to know, that I learned while I was there at times. But, in terms of like editing, if you're looking for a TV job, most places now they're using Adobe. Unless you go to bigger places, they use Avid and a bunch of different places like that. Whether it be, like Photoshop's big, Adobe After Effects are huge in the world now. So it's really tough if you don't have access to that sort of thing. But if you do, or even if you don't, even if you need to pay for it, whatever, just really, even in your own time, find ways to just really hone in on skills like that. Even if you don't have a lot of body of work to show for it, as long as you can show you can do it, that goes a longer way than saying, oh, I've done this before, but then how is an employer going to trust you if they can't see you do it? Which is what Jarrett said. If he can't see someone properly even wrap a cable, what makes you think they're going to want to let you do all these other things to trust that? So it's really just, trying to figure out what you want to do, what skills you need to be able to do that. Because I feel like the technical skills are where you can really set yourself apart. In a lot of ways, just who you are as a person is important. Just being able to show that you have like maybe a certain personality or just certain things that a lot of people don't have. But if the job is technically geared, then they don't really care as much. But if it's going to be more something where it's a relationship focused position where, being able to, whether it be sales or something like that, broadcast sales, just to show that you have a personality for something goes a long way too. But if they're looking at resumes and you're not, networking, if it's basically kind of like a blind resume where you're handing it in, sending it in online, you're going to have to stick out somehow. And the technical skills on a resume showing what you can do, reels, anything like your website, anything like that's going to go a long way first. And then you can really shine yourself through after the fact. But it's how do you break through? So I would say little things are important, but really just knowing like the skills you have to have technically to be able to be qualified for something to begin with is a pretty critical factor.
Well, if I could add on to the end of that, no one's going to be there telling you what you know or what you need to know. It's got to be on yourself. So, at least right now for anyone in the classes, the teachers have the agendas, the syllabus, you've got targets to hit. But once you're in the environment, you've got to figure out yourself, hey, I don't know this. Maybe I need to ask those questions. Maybe I need to do this. And that's, to add on one thing that truly does stick out. Someone who will come in, just do their shift or go home, or someone who's maybe showing those signs of self-initiative to ask the questions and to build and to learn and grow. And that's, I call it the golden star, because that shows me there's a person who really cares and really has that value of being here.
And before you go, Hunter, I'm just going to add one more thing to what Jarrett said is, being at Western right now, being where you are, you have access to a ton of resources. I mean, an absolute ton of resources. Not only do you have Scott and Kata and freaking Don Kahn and whoever else is still there, I don't even know anymore. But point being, you have access to a ton of professors who have done this for a living for a long time, not to mention the equipment that you won't just have access to when you're not there anymore. So while you're there, even if you have, it could be a Friday night, you're just like, I have a little bit of time. I'm going to go, to here and work on myself and work on this. And the professors will gladly oblige that. They want you to do those things. They will take their time to make sure that if this is what you want to do, that they'll help you do that. And that's the most important thing. They want you to want to learn. And if you can do that, that's going to go a huge way because, again, I wish I had access to a lot of things that I don't have access to anymore. Heck, I might come to Western this weekend, guys. I might see you, right? But like, point being, that they're there to help. Use the resources you have at your disposal while you have them, because you're going to miss them when they're gone.
As for the technology side, I 100% agree with these guys, except for not everyone is using Adobe products.
Okay, listen. All right. I'll let you finish. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The two stations I've worked for have both been Edius, which nobody at the school probably still remembers her, but Avetta was nailed Edius. She was like, Edius is going to be the next big editing thing.
Oh.
So I don't know if Western still has their license for Edius.
Nope, we lost it.
YouTube. I will tell you.
Sure, sorry.
Kind of going off what Jarrett said was, if you don't take the initiative to teach yourself something, you're going to be stuck. Because one thing I made sure to do in college was teach myself how to use Adobe products. I taught myself how to use After Effects, and to this day, I'm still on YouTube teaching myself how to use.
YouTube's great. YouTube's a great resource.
Things. YouTube is one of the coolest technological ways to educate yourself, whether it is just learning how to do a cool transition or learn how to do something. But one thing that I have noticed that is away from the technology side about knowledge that I feel like most people need, especially if you want to be a reporter or a photographer or a journalist, is you also have to have knowledge of just generic things. You have to know how local governments run. You have to know how the voting process works. You have to know about chain of command in a city. I mean, the amount of times that I've had to do stories about the mayor letting go of the police chief and how the hiring process works. I mean, you kind of have to know about a little bit about everything. And then when it comes down to your day to do a story about, I'm trying to think of something that could affect Western, closing procedures, and you have to know like how the government works and how they come up with those ideas. And so what I do a lot of the times is like, the other day I did a story about social distance learning for students and laptops, and how low-income students don't have the resources to get their laptops. So one thing I had to do is we were partnering, or we were doing a story about a company who is helping. So I had to go and do my research about what the company does, because yes, I'm just the video part of it, but video is telling the story in TV news. So a lot of people think that the reporters have all of the say, but that's not always true, because video is how you tell a story, and that is the most important part of the story. Yes, they can have amazing writing, but if you're not showing what they're talking about, or you're not able to portray what you want through video, the story is completely trash. So
just for the record, I loved all of you three when you were working as a journalist and the way you were writing, and I tried to convince all three of you to continue journalism. But I completely agree with you. You know, it's the platform that is, in video, it's video and audio. In radio, it's audio. Online, it can be all three: written word, graphics, video, audio, pictures, slideshows, right, interactive website. Again, you have to know how to write it and how to sell it.
So if you think back to your time at Western, I'm going to ask you for two things. I want to know your favorite thing that you did while you were here. Let's make it related to the program, please. Because there could be some other non-curricular favorite things, I'm sure. And then the thing that you wished you would have done when you were here.
All right, I'm going to take it first because there's a chance I might have to hop off.
Right.
I have a live shot at 4 o'clock. But one thing I did at Western that I really enjoyed, that's hard. It would either be the feature writing class or the documentary class. Me and Jake went into the woods and shot a story.
Yeah, we did.
It was one of the coolest things, and like, I actually put together. Do what?
Yeah, it was the Appalachian Trail. Yeah,
yeah,
it was the
I remember that.
Yeah,
the journey.
The journey.
But so it's funny. I was just re-updating my demo reel just because I do it every year, and I still have shots from the journey in there because it's just one of those really cool projects that I learned a lot on, not only because I did it and then I partnered with a professor who was there at the time to re-edit it, and he taught me about editing techniques and storytelling through video, and just I learned a lot through that process. And I mean, one thing I would say to a student there is like, get your hands on a project and just work on it, because the only way to learn is by actually doing it. One thing I wish I would have done at Western isn't really related to the comms department, but kind of is I wish I would have not messed around with the philosophy and religion classes. I spent so much time in classes that didn't matter per se to what I'm doing now. If I could go back in time, I would have punched myself and say, take another language. Bilingual reporters and people in this industry who are bilingual are 10 times more likely to get hired than someone who only speaks one language. And then I would also say take marketing classes, because sometimes marketing is the way to go. If you get into TV and you decide you don't like it, because it is not for everyone, marketing is your way out. You have to, I don't want to say you have to have a backup plan. I'm trying to be optimistically realistic, but you have to have an idea of how you're going to get out of news if you get in it and you don't like it.
All right, I'll take it since Hunter mentioned it, because the first thing that came into my head was that documentary we did too. And the reason that was so great is because it was such a challenge. So obviously nobody knows what we're talking about, so I'll give like a quick background. So me, Hunter, and then Jansen, who we talked about earlier, under the direction of James Machado, who was the professor at the time working here. They basically challenged.
It was Iveta.
It was
Well, it was
Iveta.
Iveta. No, I know.
It was
but
Iveta
Iveta,
originally,
but
yeah.
he helped
Yeah,
re-edit
James
and
was the one that helped me re-edit it.
Okay, so Iveta at the time, my memory is terrible. This is what happens when you hike the App Trail. You lose things. But no, we spent 3 days out on the Appalachian Trail and shot a documentary that maybe Scott and Kata want to show sometime, or at least give like a little preview of, because it was very amateur in a lot of ways. But I think it was, after it was re-edited and redone, it kind of looked in some way professionally-ish done at the time. But it was good because we really challenged ourselves to get outside the classroom and not be in a controlled environment to do things. Because sometimes when you go out, as Hunter's experienced, like on live shoots and different things and breaking news and things that happen literally at the drop of a hat, you have to be on your toes and know how to adapt to those things. So it was really cool that we had literally not a lot of things we can control. You're not in a studio. You're not there controlling lighting, controlling audio, and controlling the weather and all these different things. You can't really control your climate with what we did. So it's cool to challenge ourselves to do that. So that was probably the coolest thing and one of the best things that we got to do. And that was, I think, senior year for me is when we did that, I believe. But one thing that I wish I did, and Hunter kind of hit on it too, is not only, really focus on your, core curriculum in the comm department, but if you have other aspirations and maybe you're working on a minor in a different field or whatever. And I took a couple marketing classes, and maybe I kind of wish I took more marketing. So when Hunter mentioned that, I was kind of doing this because marketing is critical too. And I don't know how much the Western curriculum has changed. I don't know if it's changed much at all. But one thing I would maybe even urge, if it's possible, is to add social media as a side of things, because social media is literally everywhere now, right? It's literally part of all of our lives every single day. And sometimes we think we're probably professionals at it because we can get on Instagram and we can get on, Twitter, and we can do all these cool little things, and we think we're great at it. TikTok is big nowadays, whatever. But social media, like the analytical side of social media is really, really big. So depending on what you're looking to do, I would say just one thing I wish I would have done is maybe dip my foot into things I maybe didn't know a lot of things about, or things that maybe would come in handy down the road that I wouldn't think about, like maybe a marketing or something social media driven, or whatever you're looking into outside of maybe just communication department and what they offer. Maybe just kind of really find a way to enhance what you're doing in the comm department by maybe looking elsewhere, whether it be inside. Like if you're a broadcasting focused student, maybe look at, PR a little bit, maybe take some of those classes, maybe take some comm media classes, maybe learn, just kind of diversify what you're doing. And that's kind of something I wish I did. I spent a lot of time in the very broadcasting journalism realm. But sometimes I wish I maybe stepped outside a little bit and did other things. So if you have the chance to do that, depending on what you'd like to do, I would encourage that as well, because I wish I had.
Yeah, it's funny what you both said, because that's actually the one thing I wish I would have done, which was do some kind of self project that, you know, I felt very involved on, not just the breaking things that were happening, but really take something and deliver it from start to finish. That's one of the things I actually wish I would have done. But it kind of goes to what I actually enjoyed the most, which was all of just the events that happened in the time span that I was there. Because we happened to have a new chancellor when Belcher was just getting started. We had a new athletic director. There was just a lot of things. And at the time, there was no other group to do the production of these events. So it kind of came down to a couple of us that happened to be there, you know, together. So those were really my favorite opportunities, you know, kind of taking the group of classmates around me and putting together a production, whether it be, you know, SGA elections. Really, who's going to care who won SGA? But, you know, you can make a production out of it. And those were the experience that I really got the most value of. Part of it because it was the process. You don't just do a production, you know, and it forced you to get that, you know, mindset, you know, hey, we've got to test, we've got to fax out everything, we've got to make sure things are working. And building that mindset, you know, while I was there with classmates, you know, certainly gave me a leg up whenever I needed to do freelancing, because I'd already done it and tried to manage those things myself. So, you know, having little projects like that, I think was really the best thing that I did, especially while I was there, you know, and that goes to not just one individual production, but several, because, you know, and as we've mentioned before, you know, it's not one event, there's not one concert, you know, it's a rotation, there's several, it's a routine. So getting into that kind of groove was very educational and definitely put me a step ahead before I got out of Western.
Mm-hmm.
What you wish you had done? That is what you wish to have done?
No, that's the thing. The wish that I would have done would have been, you know, some self, you know, personal chose project. You know, I just latched onto the events that were happening around me without really taking the time to say, you know, what do I want to produce or document or show? You know, and as Hunter mentioned before, you know, he's doing a piece on, you know, underprivileged students, and that's a great piece, especially now. It's timely. You know, and then, you know, if it's a larger documentary about Appalachian Trail, you know, there's a lot you can do to really tell a story. And I didn't quite go that much. I stayed on more of the live side with what was happening. So I wish I could have dabbled in a little bit more of both.
Yeah, I remember that AT story. I said it on Avetta's class. She asked me to critique it. So
it was an experience. It was unlike anything that was a cool thing though too. It was unlike anything that we got to do while we were just in a classroom. And it was kind of like that special project that we took and that we were kind of charged with from Avetta to just kind of take and run with and see what we could do with it. And no, it's like what Jarrett was talking about earlier, like taking the initiative to do something, that self-initiative, like being self-motivated to do something. That was one of the things that we did, and we found, you know, just some reward out of, even though it might not show in a lot of ways. Like we felt there was some value in doing that. And I agree with Jarrett wholeheartedly on being able to take something from basically nothing, just kind of, you know, putting your head down to something and just kind of creating it and seeing it from start to finish. And not only does that make you, you know, feel better and allows you to really, you know, just challenge yourself, but it's important to be able to do that, you know, once you leave college and once you leave Western and finding work, you're going to have to be able to do that on your own as it is. So Appalachian Trail aside, Jarrett was 100% on the nose, and it's something that I would, you know, challenge all your students to try to do if they have the ability to do so.
Well, and I'll add to that part of it. Students that are listening in the 400 class, sorry, you're a little late, but
yeah,
any of those freshmen, you know, think about that, because, you know, you've got a couple of years. So if there is a larger project or something you want to build or a documentary, you know, you could even make a class around this. I think it was done before when the marching band went to New York for the Macy's parade. Yeah. So if you've got, you know, these ideas, you know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well,
We're almost towards the end.
Yeah.
So what I would like to ask is, what is
connected to your phone?
Advice for the students?
Advice to the students?
Yeah.
That's what you said, right? There was like a weird murmur in the back. Okay. Don't listen to anything Kata says. No, I'm kidding. You know I love you. Come on. We Kata hated me when I was a student. It was the worst. I was annoying her all the time. I get in her office every day.
We don't hate our students.
No, the biggest thing I would say, advice-wise, and we could talk about resumes and all this stuff as it goes, and networking is a big deal and all that stuff. But I'm going to kind of give my quick little story of how I got started with the Panthers, and kind of that being my advice to you. So it's one of those things where I actually got the opportunity as just a kind of a random connection to go interview for the internship the Panthers were offering within the Panther Vision department prior to me getting that internship at the radio station right before my senior year. I was like one of like 25 kids that got to interview for it, which is still a pretty long list to have to contend with in a lot of ways to try to stand out. And I was actually driving back to Western when I got the call from my boss who interviewed me, and he said, you didn't get it. And I was like, oh, that sucks. That sort of sucks. And sometimes you get told no. You do get told no in this industry. No matter what you choose to do, you're going to get told no, probably the first job you might ever apply to. But you're going to have thick skin about it. And just kind of move on from it, and just kind of keep reworking and revamping your resume and whatever materials, a reel, a website. I use LinkedIn a lot. LinkedIn's a great resource to have, especially nowadays. Just always try to kind of reinvent yourself as you go, and as you grow in your profession. But what ended up happening was, after I was told no, and I graduated from Western, and when I graduated from Western was it, May of 2015. So it was like April of 2015. I emailed that same guy, and I said, who was my boss? He's no longer my boss anymore. That even changed. But I emailed him, just said, hey, do you have anything available? I was just persistent. I was just very persistent about it. He said, no, unfortunately, we don't. And I even, mentioned who I was again, kind of reintroduced myself to him. Maybe he didn't remember. Maybe he did remember. But it was nice for him just to understand, say, hey, this is who I am, and just being persistent about it. So I didn't even get any opportunity there. 2016 rolls around again, right after the Panthers Super Bowl. And I emailed him again in April and said, hey, it's just me, little Jake, one more time. Do you have anything available? And he called me and said, come talk to me. So sure enough, went down to the stadium, talked to him. He offered me a position, and I kind of asked him, I said, what made you want to offer it to me? And he said, you were persistent without being annoying. And I know what you do for a living and what you were doing. And I know some people who you've worked around, so I know what kind of kid you are. And it went a long way to me wanting to offer you this position. So I would just say, always, even if you get told no, just keep working at it. And like Hunter said, he met that reporter, and then he found, they were Facebook friends, and he's just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Is there any way you can help me out? Don't ever tell someone to do something for you. You never have the right to do that, right? Just ask for help, because everyone has been in your shoes before. I promise you that, unless you were just like a really lucky person, an individual who didn't have to go through that process. Right? But it's important just to be persistent and to really use what you have, and use the people around you, use your peers, use people you're going to meet professionally to really try to elevate where you want to go. And because of my persistence, I got to work in the NFL space, and it's been great ever since. So just really be persistent, and it'll go a long way.
Yeah, I'm going to take the next, because can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to put you guys.
Just drive safely.
Wait,
Watch the road first.
He has the plugged in headphones. He doesn't have no Bluetooth. We're just doing plugged in, throwing it way back. I love it. All right. Sorry, Hunter, go ahead.
That's how you do. But no, I think Jake hit a really important. My big advice would be right now, during the people you graduate with, sometimes they're some of your best contacts or your worst enemies, depending on how you treat them. Because my first job came from a Western alumni. I've worked and I've passed by other alumni, and sometimes bridges are good, and if you burn one, that could really hurt you in the long run. And when it comes down to networking, you just gotta have to make those relationships. Even if you don't necessarily like the person, it's important, because you never know if at my next job they're going to be there, because they have the right to go to the news director and say, this guy was kind of a dick in college, and he just didn't have the good work ethic. And that could be the make or break of you having the job. Another thing I would say is have a good work ethic. You're there to work, and if you try to weasel out of doing what your responsibilities are, people will take notice. And a lot of times broadcast is a team job. So if you screw something up, it's going to have a domino effect of, hey, I'm like, and just in a real world example, it would be, hey, I forgot to go get this video. Can you do it? Which means that I have to go do it, which means another person is going to be behind. And that just kind of creates an effect. So when you're thinking about your work ethic, just remember that if you are actually going to do the work, people will notice. We've talked about a lot is also just making yourself as knowledgeable as possible about what you're doing. Learning doesn't stop when you graduate. Teaching yourself stuff is some of the most important stuff when you get out of school. I mean, I know Asheville has a really, really cool storytelling conference that I actually met one of the Western, I think he graduated last year, a Western student. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but we're friends on Facebook. So if he ever reached out, I would put my name on the line for him because I saw him at this conference and he was taking the initiative. It's called Sound of Life. If you are interested in reporting or journalism, that is a great conference to go to. It's right in y'all's back door, and I'm pretty sure they have student discounts for
They do.
entry. But that, I mean, and that's the thing is, like, at that conference, there are some of the best reporters and storytellers that are in the industry. I mean, I got to sit in on a seminar from Boyd Hubert. If you don't know who that is, you need to look him up because he is one of the best journalists I've ever met. And it's something where you just have to go and make those connections because those conferences are not only great for learning, but it's also great for networking with people. I met people who work in Atlanta who hey, I shot this in critiques. Maybe you can give me some heads up and help me further my craft and get better at what I want to do. And so just those connections just are so important for getting farther in your career. And that would be my biggest takeaway is never stop learning, and relationships are what this world is built on because it is a very small world and you never know who's going to be at your next job.
Okay, now drive safely more.
I'm good. I'm driving safe.
Well, I'll take that and go a bit of a different route because I know they hit that one pretty good. But now more than ever, and with everything else that's just happening on a national level, just take some time to do self-evaluation, especially while you're a student before you even get out to the real world. But don't forget to continue to do that. And the reason I say it is you don't want to look up and 3 years later realize, I hate what I'm doing. I don't like this. I'm just in a job. So especially when you're a student, and as we talked about earlier, with Jake, fill out different things. It's the time to get that experience in a broad range of facets because, as we've talked, the technology is going to continue to change and evolve. So what you'll likely end up doing will probably change and evolve as well. But at least if you have a wide range of experience, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. And that can continue to evolve over time. Like I said, I at one point wanted to be a technical director. That would scare me to have to go back to do that right now. I could do it, but just the elements that come with it. So, whether you're a student starting out, a student about to try to find a job, just ask yourself, hey, why is it that I'm doing it? Because that also kind of gives you that passion and drive to go in every day and give it your best. And if you forget that reasoning of why is it that I'm here, it's easy to look at the clock and say, oh, it's 3 a.m. again, it's 3 a.m. again, it's 3 a.m. again. But when you stop to think wait, I've got a great job, I've got an opportunity to go in, to tell a story, to maybe impact people's lives that didn't have a voice. So you kind of have to just keep that perspective, and on a personal level as well, and mental wellness being what it is, especially now with COVID and people being at home, just take that time and don't be ashamed of taking that time. It's critical for everyone.
And I just want to jump in and just piggyback off that real quick before we probably finish up.
Yeah, I will too.
Yeah, but like currently, like, I'm in a self-evaluation phase myself because, like I said, I always wanted to do sports. At least I thought I did, and do radio. And then I identified that maybe that wasn't what I was really passionate about after all. So I immediately was like, this isn't where I needed to be. And I wasn't really being treated the way I thought I needed to be treated. And so I moved on from it. And I feel like even though I'm stuck in certain aspects and not really sure maybe of what the future holds, I'm confident in that decision of what I made at the time and knowing it was the right move after all. Also, for those who are, getting ready to graduate, whether it be in the fall or whether it be in May of next year, I would just say, don't wait until you're graduating. Like, don't wait until a week before you graduate to try to look for a job. Like, months in advance, just start looking, start reaching out to employers and just start putting your name out there so they know that you're looking at them. And for those in like the 200 class, do as many possible internships as you can. Maybe you do an internship in one field, and then you do an internship in another, and you realize, oh, that other field is maybe more what I'd like to do after college. Because sometimes it takes really working in a certain environment to know if that's where you want to be, because you can come up with all these ideas in your head and it could change once you start doing it. So self-evaluating, like Jarrett said, is huge. But don't wait, and try to do as much as you can while you have the time to do it.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I unmute myself. Okay. I think Jared hit a really important part about, I guess, two parts, at least for me, brought up this idea is mental health is a super important thing, especially in the broadcasting industry where you work crazy hours. You never know, like, when you're going to be off or when you're going to be working or when you're going to be in the middle of a riot or whether you're going to be just doing a fluffy story about puppies. So, I mean, definitely take care of yourself. One of the other things that kind of brought to mind is when you're starting out, it's okay to start at a small market. It's okay to start at the bottom. Everyone does, and you're just going to have to work your way up. It's not as hard as most people make it sound. Being in Richmond, I started in Richmond on a midnight shift. And since that, I've only been here for about 2 years, and I've managed to work every shift getting to the shift that I want. So you just have to be able to be okay working towards your goal. I definitely think you should start with a goal and work towards it. And it's okay to start at the bottom.
Yeah, the rookie mentality exists. You are the rookie. So it takes a little while to get to be the senior.
So awesome. You guys, here's what I love about doing these and talking to communication majors, because it's not like they're not going to have anything to say. So this has been fantastic. Thank you all for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate
on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, on a Friday afternoon. And Kata and I just really enjoy it because we love to catch up with you guys and hear everything that's going on with you. And so yeah, keep us up to date on what's happening and where you're going and whatever's next, because we remember you guys, and we like to know what you're doing next. So thank you very much for taking this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say one more thing, and I'm sure Hunter and Jared will probably say the same thing. It doesn't have to be on this Zoom call, obviously, but if any of the students that are listening need to reach out to any of us for anything at all, I'd be more than happy to give you contact information for myself, and try to help you with any connections or any advice that your students may need moving forward. Because we've all worked maybe in a lot of the same capacities, but we know a lot of people from people we've graduated with, people we've just come across in the working world in all different fields of all different kinds, and of course we're in 3 different cities and everything else. So if I know that if anybody needs anything from me, I'd be more than willing to try to help them out.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to ask. Is it okay if I kind of like give students a heads up that you're available for mentoring or kind of like giving them advice?
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
The preferred method: social media, LinkedIn, or an email?
I've had a lot of students already, like from Western, reach out to me LinkedIn wise, and I'm all for it. I love it. It's a good tool and a good resource that I know I don't think I even used, or I don't even know if it was really available to have something like this done for us. So I think it'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. That's the easiest.
LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to give them my email address. I haven't been on LinkedIn in years.
Okay, I will do so.
I know it's kind of very different, but yeah, I'm with Jake. And if anyone has any like idea of where they want to go, I might have a contact in that area that could potentially help out too. So feel free to reach out and just ask for help. There's nothing wrong with it.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, guys. It was
Thanks, guys.
beautiful to seeing you all three again.
Oh, you
I'll
two.
see you
can,
in
of
Callaway
course.
soon.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Post COVID.
Don't forget.
Post COVID.
Don't forget us here in the
Wait,
moment.
are you guys doing like is it all on like in person learning right now, or what's the deal?
I'm going to stop the recording now, by the way. So.
Oh, that's fine. Is it all in person, or